Hey guys, very good morning to all of you, and welcome to the 35th session of Again, getting started with Sitecore Managed Cloud Containers Part 2. So we had the first chapter of this same session a couple of months ago where Vikas and Raman talked about Managed Cloud Containers overview of its architecture, its setup steps, uh, in summary, the basics. And today they are going to discuss on managing the Sitecore Cloud application and pipelines, additional modules, monitoring the app, and managing the Sitecore logs. So handing over to Vikas.
Yeah, thanks, Alok. And thanks, Alok, Khushbu, and the complete SUG India team. Once again, myself, Vikas, and Raman back with our second part of the session, where we'll be talking about continuing our last discussion of Sitecore Managed Cloud. So just a little introduction again. So myself, Vikas Kumar, I worked as a Senior Director Practice Head for Digital and DXP Solutions in Aspires. So I have around 19 plus years of experience, and I have a kind of experience of more than 50 plus DXP platform implementations, including Sitecore and some others. Right, so I have few certifications in Sitecore as yours and the platform. So here are a few of my handles to get in touch with me. Raman.
Yep. Thanks, Vicky. And yeah, thanks Sitecore User Group India to give us this platform to present something about Sitecore Managed Cloud. So yeah, about me, I'm a Sitecore Technology MVP 2022 and the technical architect at Aspire Inflabs in India. I have around 8 years of experience in Sitecore, and I'm working with more than around 10 years with Microsoft and related technologies. I've been certified with Sitecore and Azure developer certifications. I've been speaker at various Sitecore user groups and the Virtual Developer Day 2021 and 2022, where I spoke about various Sitecore related topics. And I usually write my blogs with Sitecore with Raman, where I have already written about few blogs and series about containers and managed cloud. So even after this session, you can go through those series, so that will make more sense then. And you can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter, and pretty much active on Slack and Stack Exchange as well. So yeah, that's about me. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Raman. So this is like, what's the idea? In last discussion, we start with our discussion about Sitecore Managed Cloud general, the options available into the kind of Sitecore Managed Cloud, the benefit of using the Sitecore Managed Cloud. And later we come on to the part where how you will convert your existing solution to make it a cloud ready, what's all changes required in your solution to make it ready. And we talk about the pipeline, how you can kind of on the fly can create a Docker instance to push onto the managed cloud using the base image. So we did cover mostly like this part in our last section, where we discuss about all these things. Our today's section will focus a bit more on towards the managed cloud side of things. So we already prepared our solution is ready, and we do have the pipeline ready to push onto the container history. But there's a lot to manage at the Sitecore Managed Cloud for containers. That's what we'll see in today's sessions. Right, so over to Raman to continue on to the deployment part, like how we will push it to container registry, and how we'll sing this Sitecore programs.
Yeah. Okay. So as Vicky told, in the last session, we covered Sitecore Managed Cloud Container components and its architecture, what subscription and access we will get out of the box with Managed Cloud subscription, development with containers, and push those images to Managed Cloud Asia. But we have covered like pushing those images to ACR manually. Then today we'll see how to push those images to the CI pipeline. Though I've touched up a bit like how to build those pipeline, but just to see like a very high level overview how to build the CI pipeline, what all components we can include in the CI pipeline to push these images. And then later on, VK will cover like the CD and the application pipeline, which we are going to run in the managed cloud. So basically here, if you will see on the screen that this is a Azure pipeline that we have created to complete the CI process. So first component we have taken is the Docker compose component, which is to build all these Docker images on the fly. So here we will going to have the two types of Azure DevOps platform. Basically, one which we are responsible for, where we will commit our solution code, and the other one which Sitecore will provide. So all this CI pipeline and CLI pipeline we will write in our very own organized Docker ADO platform. So here in the Docker build step, first of all, we'll take all the code from the committed repository. Then here, if you will see on the right hand side that we have to create a connection from this Azure DevOps to the Sitecore managed DevOps using service principal. So to get the service principal access, we basically need to raise access on the support portal. They will provide us a service principal credential, and we just need to manage the service principal here. And then we'll be able to communicate to the Sitecore managed Azure DevOps. Once all these Docker images are built on the fly, and they will be pushed to the ACR. So we have to give the Azure container registry path in the second step. And then once these images will be pushed to the Sitecore managed ACR, we have to make changes in the application pipeline. So about this application pipeline, VK is going to discuss in further slides, but basically there we have to map all the images we have pushed just now to the Sitecore managed cloud. We just have to update those tags. As soon as we will update those tags, we have to create, basically we have to create first of all a feature request, and then we have to merge that feature request into the main branch. As soon as the main branch is updated, the application main branch, the CD pipeline will run. So all this process that VK is now going to explain, like what the application pipeline is, how this how the pipeline will trigger. But I am just giving the overview how this process will complete. Then once the CD pipeline will complete, the next step is to create the CLI. So if you have worked with Sitecore like Unicorn or TDS, you already know that syncing the Sitecore item is the important part of the Sitecore deployment. So basically, once our core deployment is done, we have to sync the Sitecore items as well with the Sitecore instance. So for that also, we have created a pipeline in Azure. So here we have just written a very basic PowerShell script. You can extend it as per your requirement. So basically, you just need to install the Sitecore CLI tool, and then using non-interactive login CLI command of the SES, you just need to basically connect to the Sitecore instance and then push the Sitecore chain items to that Sitecore instance. So that's about the Sitecore CLI pipeline to sync the item. Now, in the further slides, we will explain what the repository that Sitecore will manage and how we will going to install any other third-party modules on top of that. Yeah, over to you, VK.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so that part we thought to cover kind of the last time, but because of the time we didn't cover this part, so we thought to cover in last session. But anyway, so let's kind of talk about now. So now we kind of push our kind of changes to the ACR over here. But as the Raman mentioned here, the one change is required into the application pipeline that we will discuss. That will push actually our changes to the AKS, because currently the changes are still on to the ACR only. Okay, so that's what we will be discussing about, more about the application and the infrastructure pipeline. That we will be then we'll be looking how we can kind of update our cloud containers if we have to. There may be many reasons for it, like want to add a PowerShell module, you want to add SXA, and you want to add maybe a kind of a horizon into it. So there are many or some changes in Solr. So those changes kind of you need to manage yourself. Sitecore will provide you the vanilla instance, then you can manage, and they have given the documentation that we can follow, but we are here, will give you the overall process of managing this. Then we'll see how you can access actually the multiple services in managed cloud containers, because it's not the IaaS or PaaS environments. You will directly go on server or service and kind of do your work. It's an AKS. So you need to access a AKS environment. So we'll talk a little bit about the AKS. Then we'll see how you will manage the Sitecore logs, right? So because it's not kind of directly, you can't go to the containers to see what's over there, but for Sitecore development point of view, how our application is performing, we need to kind of see our Sitecore and the IaaS logs, so how we can manage those. And because overall infrastructure of the containers, then we'll see how we can monitor and the kind of alerts default the Sitecore provides, and we can add our own alerts as well on top of that. Then we'll see the DR options and the backup restore options available with the cloud. And then we'll see about how you can update a domain and the certificates endpoints, because we want to access it with our own domain. Like if I have to move the Spire site, so I have to move the spire.com and the certificates to the things. So process for updating this. So coming back to over here, one repository and the pipeline that Raman explained to push it to the ACR, Sitecore provides us the two repositories themselves and two pipelines. We call it like the managed cloud for containers repository and the pipelines. The first one is the infrastructure and second is the application repository. Because Sitecore has used this repository to build the underlying infrastructure, and the some pipeline and some code into the repository is help to manage that underlying infrastructure as well. Because I'm not sure how much you're aware, but AKS underlying works behind the scene is the multiple virtual machine we call nodes here, right? So we see the diagram in our last section, so it works on nodes. So to manage those nodes, there are some code and the pipelines that we need to work on. So this is written onto the Terraform scripts as a part of the Terraform script. Second is the application pipeline. You do have to deploy or manage AKS, any change you require into the Sitecore side of things, or you can say the application side of things. You need to kind of update this repository and has to run the pipeline, the application pipeline, to push those changes to the Azure Kubernetes. To see it in detail, you will see like the pipelines. That was a repository, the pipelines. Those pipelines actually fires the Terraform scripts for the infrastructure part. And with our deployment and some infrastructure pipelines fired automatically, they just keep our VMs up to date, like patching and all those things. Because we are now in modern world, and if we still have to do the patching, then it's not the way. So then that's why the Sitecore has built some of the pipeline that's the auto-fired with the deployment. But if you're not deploying it for longer, more than month, 2 months, 3 months, it's actually, you might have to fire those pipelines manually as well. So it's kind of recommend to always see the underlying, the infrastructure as well. And this is the application repository. That's kind of the that's kind of update the actual AKS instance for all the Sitecore and some other things for managing that we do have. We'll discuss about this Logstacks Firebit that we help to manage this AKS infrastructure. And some other are the external services that we used. We'll see how these things are connected to that as well. So it's kind of, you need to little bit understand Terraform and the Ansible to manage this cloud containers. It's not you need to be expert, but as a Sitecore developer as well, it's very easy. They have kind of given the documentation as well, so you can quickly see what the changes is required to manage it. We don't have to build anything as a Sitecore developer or architect, but if you need too much changes, probably you may need a specialist of the Terraforms or the Ansibles So otherwise, you can manage it yourself as well. Okay, so as we see, the two pipelines and the two repositories available is not something like, again, like our solution, we manage those repositories as well. And if we do have to make any changes, obviously we do have to create a feature branch out of it. If you want to change the cloud infrastructure, anything, create a feature branch, merge, push your changes to the main branch. As soon as you push it into the main branch, it will automatically execute the infrastructure pipeline, and it will update your infrastructure accordingly. So you're not doing anything manually. It's all through the scripts only. That's we call it like infrastructure as a code. So everything comes as in Terraform scripts, and right. So and then you need to see whether they have finished successfully or not to your pipeline. If not, probably you need to roll back your changes to previous branch, and you can kind of go back to your previous infrastructure as well. So this is a process, good practice to always do it through feature branch part of it. And similarly, this is the Terraform. And again, if you want to update Sitecore application, and because that's written in the Ansible scripts or the playbook, right? So you will kind of again check out the things, create a feature branch out of it, publish your changes, and then execute the application pipeline, right? It will automatically run anyway with the changes. We can change our configuration, but by default, it runs automatically. That's why in Raman's step, you will see when we push it to ACR, our repository, we updated one of the file to run one of the application pipeline to deploy our changes, our latest image to the AKS. And then you make sure it runs successfully, right? So otherwise you may have to take some of the actions as well. Okay, so let's see like the multiple modules that we'll see. We see the Sitecore will provide you the infrastructure, but you do have to update that infrastructure. So it's a very similar process as we do now in IaaS or the PaaS environment. Let's say you have to have the PowerShell script, not the script, the PowerShell module into your Sitecore instance. What you will do first, you will update your local Sitecore instance. Then you will go onto the server, update over there. So same here in the container side of things. First, you will update your local Docker instance. So you will make all the required changes to point to a image with the PowerShell. So you need to make some changes, right? An example of PowerShell or SXA, whatever the update you want to make it. And then obviously execute the pipeline that Raman's explained earlier, right? To push changes to the ACR. And then from there, you update the Ansible script. And we kind of have written a step as well to update the Ansible script. But that was for the deployment. It was like same change. We need to just have the version number of the new image. So those changes, so we were updating those changes directly with the pipeline. But here you might have to update again in the process of, that's I explained just now, like creating a feature branch, updating it, the changes required for SXA, PowerShell, or any extra module that you want into your cloud. Update your Ansible scripts as per the Sitecore documentation and execute the pipeline. So that way your local instance done, your ACR has the images with the module that you want, and also you have your Azure Kubernetes, the Sitecore instance with the latest changes. So this is the process actually is very important to kind of learn. Raman will explain a bit more in detail for multiple services that we do have updated in our kind of the instance, because we need them. Like in our instance, we need PowerShell, CLI, SXA, Horizon, custom Solr, and JSS and headless part of it. So Raman will explain some of those individually so that you can see those things, how you can kind of update your Sitecore cloud.
Yeah.
Raman.
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's see how we can add these modules. So as VK has already prepared the base, like in case of we need to add any module to the Sitecore in containers terminology, how you can create. So VK has already discussed about the base things that we'll need to do, but here I'll just pick the specific module, like a very common one, SPE and SXA module, and then we'll see how we can add these to the containers while we are doing the local development, and then push these images to the managed cloud container. So on the containers on Kubernetes as well, we have these modules installed by default. So if you're working with Sitecore, you know it's very common practice to install these modules in Sitecore to extend all this functionality. So let's say, so SXA, you already know that it's a module means it was developed to speed up the production of the website and to reuse the components, layouts, and templates across a variety of the websites. Now, how to add this SXA module? So you basically need to create specific Docker images and then push these images to ACR. So these steps that I'm going to explain here will be pretty much same for all the other module, be it like the Sitecore defined module or be it any third-party module. So the steps will be pretty much same, at least for the local development. Yeah, for managed cloud, there might be some differences because there are some Ansible scripts steps we need to change here and there, but overall the idea will be the same. Okay. So the Sitecore provides officially supported images for all these modules that contains the required files and scripts that you'll need to install the Sitecore module when you build the Sitecore custom image. Similar to the solution, these assets image are intended as a source during build, and they are not used as a runtime image. So first of all, we'll need to add the Docker file instruction for each of these roles, mainly CM, MS SQL, Solr, and in case of SXA, it will be on the CD role as well. So these role-based Docker file can be found in the Docker folder, and under that we have a build subfolder. So if you, from the part one of our webinar, if you recollect that I have told the basic Docker folder structure. So there we have a build subfolder, and under that we can find all these role-based Docker file. Now, in this Docker file, first of all, declare the arguments and then build the stages for SPE and SXA. And then required MS SQL Docker file instruction are added for both SPE and SXA. So we basically need to add the instructions. Once we added the Docker file instruction, we need to configure the Docker compose override file to map these module images. So here in this screenshot, if you will see, we have the SPE and SXA image value, which are configured to use a Docker image repository for each modules. So these path we will get from this image provider. So for SXA and SPE, Sitecore itself is the image provider. So we get this path from the Sitecore official repository. If you will take a note here that there are no XP not images. Vika, can you go back, please? Yeah. So here we have the XP1 images only. So Sitecore does not provide the XP node for these assets images. We have either XP1 or XM1 images. So we just to be cautious while you're doing the local development. Basically we'll need to add the specific image tags or version to be defined in the SPE version and SXA version variable. So we have the .env file. There we can define all these variables. So to make everything as a dynamic and so that we can integrate very easily while we are creating the CI pipeline. Same thing, the remainder of the service like MS SQL or Solr, we have to configure in the same way like we have configured this CM or CD Docker instruction file. Now build these images in the local and push these images to the ACR. Okay, so now once we have pushed the images to the ACR, so our local development is now very well developed with to handle the SXA and SPE. Now we have to configure the Sitecore managed cloud so that there also we can see the SXA module toolkits, and we can utilize the SPE as well. So to configure this, basically, if I have to tell you in the simple words that basically if when we do the development with the traditional Sitecore XP Note or like XP1, anything in the local development. So we install first of all the module in our local, and then we push those changes via CI pipeline, or we have to go to the server to install that module again. So the same thing we are going here. We have first installed that module onto the local development, and then we are going to do the same changes in the CD pipeline that VK has explained, and then MCC will handle the SXA and SPE deployment from next deployment onwards. So basically, to do this, basically we need to go to the application repository and open the Docker image JSON file. And there we have to map the new images that we have pushed to the ACR. After we have mapped the new images, we have to navigate to the Sitecore and Sitecore topology based template. And we have to add the job, basically init job, and then we will do the Solr related settings for the SXA. We have to basically add some Ansible tasks to execute those job by modifying the init file. So all these steps you can find on the Sitecore official documentation, what job you need to add, what Ansible task you will need to add in the application repository. So the same steps you'll need to perform for the SQL, the steps we have performed for the Solr. Once this is done, application pipeline will automatically run, and it will deploy all these changes onto the Kubernetes, and SXA and SPE module will be installed on the vanilla Sitecore instance. So yeah, this was about installation of any module to the Sitecore. Now there are sometimes the requirement comes that we need to add custom Solr cores as well. Again, the basic steps remains the same, that we have to first do the development in local, then we have to configure the managed cloud, and then push these changes through the application pipeline or infrastructure pipeline. In case of Solr, just a few more steps will be added, because we already have the Solr init container from Sitecore 10.1 onwards. So basically, Solr container is used for running the Solr cloud instance on the Docker, but Solr init container is used for initialization. So this will create all the indexes, then run the container, and once all the indexes are initialized, it will stop the container with maybe exit 0 code. So now to add the custom cores to the Solr, we need to create an additional layer into the Solr init image. To do this, we need to create a custom JSON file, make sure that this JSON file must be in the C data folder in the Solr init container. And then file name must be start with the text core, and the JSON must be start with either Sitecore or XDB. And then update the Docker file, which will copy all this file to the C data folder. And once you will do this, new custom cores will be added to the local Solr dashboard. Now, next is that you can run the Docker compose file. I usually run this with build these images with no cache, so that there is no chances of caching when I add any new images, or I build this custom images. So once these custom images will be prepared, Solr init will start. It will create custom indexes in the Solr, and then you can push these images to the ACR for further like MCC configuration. Yeah, next slide. Yes. So now we have pushed the images to the ACR. Now we have to add the Solr cores to the Sitecore managed cloud, and which is pretty simple. And there are less steps what we have when we added any like SXA or SPE module. So here we just need to first of all push the init image to the ACR, and then in the application repository, you will basically need to open the search text Solr init SPE YML. So that this is already an inbuilt YML, which is handling all the default core for SXA. You just need to go there and replace the SXA Solr collection to the custom core name. So let's say I have created a new core name with something like customer or something. So you just need to replace this Solr collection with the new core. And once you will run the application pipeline, managed cloud will automatically take care of the new core, and it will automatically create the new core into the search text instance. And from the next time onwards, it will automatically populate and rebuild. So yeah, this is pretty much simple and pretty much straightforward. You just need to follow these 2 steps to add the Solr course. So yeah, this was the local development and adding these modules. So next we will see IS log. So VK will describe this.
Right. Okay, great. You see, I explained the basic steps, and you see how we can follow these steps for SXA, SP, and things. So now we have the we build our local solution. We have now our changes SXA or SP modules into the cloud as well. And now how we will manage the cloud, right? So this containers part of it. There are various ways of managing. Obviously, if it's an AKS, Azure Kubernetes Services. So you will definitely need to go on to the Azure Kubernetes Services for verifying all the things. I'll just show you how this AKS will look like actually in next slides, from where you can see all your different containers, ports. Are they healthy? What's their IP address, and different properties about those that you can work from here. There are other things like, okay, this is containers, how I will go and check the different, let's say, the host names associated with it. So I think the best way that we find, okay, either you can ask Sitecore or anything, or better, because anything related to security or the URLs or the certificates or the passwords, all managed within the Azure Key Vault. So you can go actually in Azure Key Vault, and you will see multiples, the Key Vault instances for certificates or for CD host name or CM host names. So all these kind of are managed through here. You can go over there, click on any of these, and can find out the URLs for multiple services, CM, CD, ID, right? So all those things that you can find out from the Azure. So first things is you need to understand a little bit of how the AKS works. You need to understand about the Azure Key Vault. That is important to know details about your different services, their communication. And once you log into like the ID or the additional Solr, Grafana, or Kibana instance, most of these services are authenticated with your the cloud instance URL only. So Sitecore has built in such a way so that you don't have to look for another kind of the credentials to go on to those external services. They will be authenticated with your cloud credentials only. So these is important things to be kind of note down. So let's see, once you go in Azure and click on the AKS service. So AKS service will open this, because we see everything is in AKS, right? So here, if I show you the diagram that we discussed in last session, so all these things, this is like our AKS hosted on these nodes, right? So this is our AKS. We can't go there. So this is the interface to show you the AKS instances. The multiple instances that you will see over here, a Cortex service or the XDB service or a CD service or a CM service, right? So call it like a pod or the containers. That's what's the state, whether they are running, not running, right? So ready, how many of they are, if they are the multiples for scalability purpose, their IP addresses, which we just kind of, for which node they are into it. Node is kind of a machine actually the AKS is using. So this is important to kind of to see this whenever you deploy, let's say a changes. First we see again CM, whether it's up or not up, ready or not ready. So this is important to kind of consider. If your CM is not working, you can see, okay, whether it's stop or not stop. You can try it from here as well. One more thing here, if you see in diagram here, you will see multiple namespace. Namespace is the logical classification of different containers ports. So here Sitecore, all Sitecore related ports you will find out in namespace as Sitecore. All the monitoring related ports that you will find in this namespace, and all the logging based, you will find it in logging namespace. So similarly, you can kind of look which namespace you are looking for. You can filter it by this, you can filter by status. So this is namespace you will filter, you will have to use in containers cloud a lot for multiple services. That's why it's kind of important to look over here. And then there are some other different options provided by the Azure to manage the AKS that you can kind of verify. But like in IaaS or PaaS, we see the VMs or the apps properties. Here, you can only see the AKS property. You can't kind of directly go into any of these pods. So that's how we manage the Kubernetes and our Sitecore instances from here. Now we'll see how we will manage the Sitecore logs, because that's the biggest problem that every developer have, how I will see my application performing, or if there's an issue. Yes, Raman.
Yeah, thanks, Vijay. So when we have deployed our application to AKS, now the next part comes how we can monitor the logs and how we can see the Sitecore related logs, or whether it's IaaS logs. So Sitecore Managed Cloud Container uses an ELK stack, which is an acronym used to describe a stack that comprises of three popular projects, which is Elasticsearch, Logstash, and Kibana. So ELK to collect the aggregate log files that are output by various containers in Kubernetes cluster. So later they have acquired Beats, and then this was also added to the group. So if you will see this diagram, this illustrates the data flow for window-based and the Sitecore role container. So first of all, Sitecore and IaaS logs are returned to the files. Log monitor will read the log files and export them to the std out of the running container. Then FileBeat scrapes log file from the std out of the container and writes them to the local file system. So basically, these folder containing these files and will share it to a local volume. Then Logstash read these log files from the FileBeat container volume and process them, and basically this parsed data will get sent to the Elasticsearch. So these three components, the three lower layer components you are seeing here, are the part of AKS cluster. Now the upper two components, Elasticsearch and Kibana, these are part of Elastic Cloud. So basically all the parsed data that was stored in the Elasticsearch database, it is passed to the Elasticsearch, and users can view this data via Kibana interface. So yeah, in the next slide, I will show the Kibana interface. Sorry. So yes, this is the Kibana interface. So here, all the data that was passed, we can view this, and we can even filter with the help of KQL query. So as VK explained, that we can first of all mention which namespace we want to filter out our logs to, then which pod we are interested to see the logs, and then what is the message, like we want to see the error messages, informations, warnings, whatever. Like if you are familiar with the like monitoring the Sitecore logs on the on premises, it is pretty much simple. You go to app data and then see the like which kind of log you want to see. Here everything comes in form of query, and you just need to filter out those correct logs, and then you will get in this lower window, you will get all these logs. There are so many filters you can put, like you can even put the timestamps, you can put any specific port that you want to go, or any like versions, or anything you can put in form of KQL query, and you will get those logs. So yeah.
Basically, everything you got it as a part of your Sitecore message, they will kind of become your filter to filter your messages.
Logs.
So that was like the Sitecore and the IaaS logs. But what about the infrastructure, ports, and all those things? We see the AKS, right? So we can go into the AKS and find out about our Sitecore. But everybody is not very familiar with the Sitecore, and everybody doesn't have the access to the maybe the AKS as well. So one more service that Sitecore Managed Cloud Containers provide is the another stack containing the Prometheus and the Grafana services. So here again, it's a very similar process. That's the ELK stack that the Raman shows for those logs. So we use the metric exporters. That's kind of a library that exports the infrastructure logs and add it onto the Prometheus kind of the pod that's kind of running. And this Prometheus actually give it to Grafana, and Grafana will showcase kind of, we can see all these things directly into the Grafana interface that I'll showcase you, like how it will be into the Grafana. So this is again very similar. Get it from the AKS, store it in between Prometheus, and visualize using the Grafana. Like there, it was stored by the Elasticsearch, visualized by the Kibana. Here, the Prometheus actually stores it and visualized by the Grafana. But there's one more part over here, because monitoring, usually you got some error, you will go into the Kibana, find out the site code. But the infrastructure part, right? So we want some alerts as well. So for the alerts, like we discuss about, we get first everything onto the Prometheus, then to the Grafana. There's one more part the Prometheus does is push the alerts as well, right? To the alert manager, and alert manager, from alert you can have the emails or the messages or webhooks anywhere. So any integration that you could kind of do, Sitecore sends a lot of email to us based on those alerts. Whoever is managing the kind of the infrastructure from the partner and the customer side, so we'll also get those notification and the alerts as well. So there are many default alerts set up over here, which we will see. And we can also visualize how our infrastructure and different things kind of work using the Grafana. So first, let's see the what you will see into the Grafana over here. So in Grafana, you can see all the container overview, like list all the containers with their namespace, like you see in the AKS as well, right? So if AKS seems to be a bit complex, I think Grafana gave you a kind of a to the non-technical users, a dashboard kind of things that they can visualize the complete the infrastructure and can take the action if required to, right? So host disk and host disk for the Windows, all right? So file system available space, all those things. Sometimes if okay, there's no memory and all those things, right? So no space. All these things are kind of, you can see the ingress again, all the traffic flows through the ingress. So that's the important aspect of the overall that we discussed in the last session. And the Kubernetes cluster overview of same, how the memory and the CPU request limits, utilization per port. So we can see if CM is utilizing more, CD is utilizing more, right? Or if any of our custom code is utilizing more, right? So part of it. And then MS SQL Elastic Pool that we can visualize from here, right? And Redis. So this AKS was giving you about the containers part only up to here, but here Grafana can provide you a bit more about Windows node or your Redis node or the SQL node. You don't have to go on individual services like AKS or SQL Server or Windows. You can visualize the complete dashboard from the Grafana only. So this is how your the Grafana looks like. And again, if I am looking the container ports, I will select the namespace like as a Sitecore, as we have 3 namespace default, and which port I'm looking. If you want to look to multiple port, you can just say ++ multiple ports as well. If you want to look CM like CD or processing, or if it is like this is the experience then, so you have the other many ports as well. In XM we have only few. Yeah, so this is how you can kind of you visualize in a dashboard way about your complete infrastructure. So by Kibana and the Grafana is not a black box for you, right? So Container Cloud, you can visualize how your Sitecore application behaving and how your infrastructure is behaving, including all the services, nodes, ports, SQL, Redis, or based on your custom requirement, you might have your own Azure component as well, or maybe any other third-party components as well from any other cloud as well. But from Sitecore Managed Cloud perspective, all these things comes as out of box predefined for you, which you might have to customize it as your need if required to as well. And right, so there's some other factors you can see here last 1 hour or yesterday how it was. If you come in the morning and you'll see, okay, there was some logs issues into the Sitecore Okay, the Sitecore team comes over, okay, she in the Kibana yesterday night, I see some logs. Then you can see how actually the infrastructure was behaving at that particular time. So you might have to kind of see from this how my kind of the infrastructure was behaving, so that you can see, okay, it's because of this, this code was down or was up, or what exactly happened, until when it's all working and until when it's kind of stops working. So there are many things that kind of you can go and verify. That's kind of help us to manage the containers cloud. Okay, so next part is the DR options, like the cold and hot, and how we can do a little bit of restore backup. Yes, Raman.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Vicky. So yeah, now we are heading up to the last, I think, two components that managed cloud provides. So one of them is DR, and then we'll discuss about how we can update the domain. So I'll quickly just show you what are the DR. So basically, as we all know that disaster recovery allows an organization to quickly resume the critical functions following a disaster that requires manual intervention. So Sitecore DR service offers two types of services. One is DR basic, which is which acts upon the confirmation. Another one is the DR managed, which acts automatically. Then these four services further divides into two parts. One is cold standby, which is like minimum infrastructure recovery, and then the hot standby, which is full replica. So what we can ask them is a combination of all these services, like basic cold or the basic hot, managed cold, managed hot. We can just look into all these what features it will provide, and we can just ask them okay, we want our DR should be basic cold, something like that. Okay, so I'll just give you example. Let's say what DR basic cold standby will provide. So it's basically called a reactive service. The recovery and failover process starts after the events and require confirmation from the customer, because as I told, it is a basic. So it acts on the confirmation from the customer. So this is a cost-effective service option with a longer recovery time objective, which is we called as a RTO, very common terminology in terms of disaster recovery. So this service type provides provisions minimum infrastructure required and is often for used for non-critical applications. So everything is suggested by its name itself. It's DR basic and cold. So it will act on the confirmation and it will provide very minimum infrastructure. So same thing for DR managed hot standby, it is the managed service, means it will act automatically, and hot standby means it will provide the full replica of that. So basically the failback and failover process starts automatically and provision entire replica of primary sites. So this provides the shortest RTO interval. So to decide which recovery option matches your requirement, use the following table, which is on the screen, and you can consider how quickly your site needs to be back online in an event of let's say outage. What is the recovery point you want to see? What is the recovery time objective you want? So based on all these criteria, whatever is mentioned over here, you can decide for which service and which offering you want to go for. So yep. Then the next, yeah. Then next we have the last topic for the day is the update a domain and certificates for the Sitecore endpoint. So when basically we deploy the Sitecore instance on AKS, so Sitecore provisions the temporarily, or we can say the default instances, and install certificates for those DNSs. But in the real scenario, we are going to have our our actual URLs and DNS. So you can update the managed cloud container solution with the new domains for the Sitecore endpoints. For that, you just need to prepare a wildcard certificate, which we called as a .pfx file for the new top level domain. For example, let's say for our star.example.com, something like that. So we can create any subdomain under that. Then you can configure DNS record for your new domains. Like we will need domain for CM, CD, ID, Grafana, Kibana, for whatever you want to expose publicly, you have to prepare a DNS record, and you can add CNAME for your custom domain, which are pointed to as your front door. Then the next part is on support ticket. You have to run support ticket with Sitecore so that they can unbound the old CNAME from the Azure front door, and they can bound the new CNAME that you want to use for the DNS with the Azure front door. Then the next step is we need to update the key vault secret. Basically, when PK showed you, there were few entry in the key vaults, like what will be the CD host name, CM host name, ID host name. So we have to update the key vaults with this new host name. And then we have to update the new certificates and point in the KVT as well. Once all these steps are done, we need to run the Azure front door pipeline, which is again provided by Sitecore in their managed cloud instance. Once we will run this, our instances will be updated with the new certificates and the new domain. Just you need to make sure that updating all these things might take like have a downtime of around 30 minutes. That side frames. So you just need to be cautious while you're updating these domains and certificates. So yeah, I think we have covered most of the topics that comes with the Sitecore Managed Cloud, how we can customize, how we can create CI pipelines, then the out-of-the-box components. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that was a different topics. That's what Raman was saying, like the interface that you were looking is the Azure front door. So from there, because all the traffic flows into the AKS using this, so we can view all the domains like are publicly exposed from the AKS onto the front door side of things, like the ones updated. This is like the front end domains, right? So that's how the traffic flows within it, from front door to Ingress, and Ingress actually this Nginx server manage all the traffic flows to it. So that was the last topic. So the idea was you to prepare, not to give you awareness about the how the Sitecore managed cloud containers works, what are the different components, and what you need to learn, right? Obviously, our detailed documentation is available on Sitecore, but these two sessions will give you the overall idea what all to take you to the decision, what's the right kind of things for you to do to go with web app services or the container services, right? So all has its own advantage and disadvantage. In my view, we are managing few customers with app service, few customers with container services. Cost-wise, container services little little less cost, little less, but it initially have the little longer learning curve as compared to apps. As apps, anyways, a kind of little old technology, but this is little learning curve for the developers, how they can manage within their local instances, and how they kind of manage it onto the server. But I think once you are used to, it's a way to go for the future easy maintenance, cost-effective way. But yes, initially is a little learning curve, and it's kind of called a Sitecore Managed Cloud, but it's not a managed service. So you need to learn a little bit those things, what we kind of discussed about yourself as well. So the Sitecore will kind of host it, help us a lot wherever is required. But for many things, like it's on our KT as well, as we discussed the RASI metrics in the first instance as well. So that was all. So we are open for few questions. Last time we missed because of the time any of the question. If there are few questions, I think then we are good to have a few questions as well. Thank you, and thanks all for joining us today. So Alok, do we have questions, or are we good to close otherwise? Yes, Alok, I can see myself this chat. No more. I think then it's kind of thanks everyone, and it was nice. Thanks, Alok.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I was speaking on mute. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. So yeah, I was just saying, I think there is no question in chat window, but and we can give 2-3 minutes if anyone wants to discuss anything or ask any question. I
Sure.
will allow to unmute participants. So just a second. Yeah, now you can unmute yourself, and if you have any discussion point, you can directly discuss with Vikas and Raman. I think we are good, Raman
Okay.
and Vikas. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you,
yeah,
everyone. Yeah.
thank
joining
you.
for-
Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us.
No
Yeah.
problem.
And thank you all participants for joining. See you next
Thank
time.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.